Leaders and experts to share their unfiltered truth about the journey to self-actualization and the path to heart-centered leadership. You'll hear raw lessons, learn ancient wisdom, and practical steps to rise to your fullest potential. Now is the time to walk into this new paradigm of leadership. Let's transcend together. Welcome back to Transcendent Leadership. I'm your host, Carissa Johnson, and today I have a feeling we're going to have our minds blown when we have this conversation with our guest, Mr. James Silvas, who's an international mindset specialist and a peak performance coach who teaches athletes, leaders, and high-performing teams how to clear their minds, break through fear, and optimize their performance and enhance the quality of their personal and professional lives. Welcome to the show.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling today?
Grounded, clear, productive, and ready.
Wow. Very to the point. You seem very tuned in to yourself.
Earlier I was in a flow and I just carried it here and excited to share what comes up and help the audience, the listener, really apply what we talk about and enhance whatever they have going on.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. I want to share something with you that's a little edgy. So I've done how many podcasts now? I think we're at 190.
Congrats.
Thank you. And with you, it's very interesting because something has come up for me with you that I wanted to share live and get the audience tuned into it and then kind of share why and kind of bridge them in.
Cool.
So I actually feel a little triggered by you. But in some ways, I reframe it as activated.
Okay.
You have a very powerful presence and very certain and conviction. And it's really interesting to be in your energy because there's this invitation to for challenge, but not in a forceful way. But when I experience your energy on our call and just on your feed, it's there's an opportunity, I'm going to hold myself here and I'm going to invite you to rise. And so I wanted to share that with you just because of sometimes I think as coaches and performance coaches, we so often don't see ourselves the way that other people see us. And so when I say triggered, it's a compliment to you and a testament that your being more than, obviously I haven't been a client of yours or experienced any of your coaching, but your being really invites people to rise to their next level naturally. And I imagine that even with your coaching, that's part of the process is there's a standard and a loving standard that you hold people to that is palpable and inspiring. And it's really invited me to take a closer look at my business and my leadership and the way that I hone in on my skills. So I hope that you receive that in the way that it's meant. Some people use triggering as and I don't want to say you're triggering me. I want to say I'm triggered or I'm activated. But I've been experiencing that with the group here lately. When you get around like-minded people, you really notice where you play small and you notice where you hide. And so I just wanted to reflect that back to you that getting to know you, I really feel inspired by who you are in the world. And I'm really excited to dive in and share the audience how you've gotten to this place. I just wanted to offer that to you.
Talk about a really cool way to start a podcast. That's never I've heard similar feedback, but not in this format and not in such a heartfelt way. So thank you for that mirror, and I receive that, and I'm honored and grateful that who I show up as is that. I wouldn't want to have it any other way. So
Truly, that is the greatest gift, that you get to show up in the world in a way that naturally inspires and invites people to rise. And it's, like I said, it's very palpable. So I'm glad that you're receiving it in that way. And I'm glad that I corrected the reframe because I don't want to ever say you trigger me, but it's I'm inspired, I'm activated by your presence. Yeah. And I think that's beautiful.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you think that in your work, because I know you do so much of the energies and spirituality and coaching as well, do you think, how much of that do you think is a gift versus cultivation?
I think it's a cultivation. I don't really think it's a gift. I mean, it's a gift because it's almost like if you went to the store and got it, but now you have it.
Yeah.
So when you share it, it's a gift.
Got it.
But it's like, I think it's very evident to me that you've cultivated. When I say gift, it's not something that I sense that you were born with.
Got it.
Although there could be aspects of your strengths that come through in that same way. But I think that's a really good note to make, is that it doesn't come across to me as like, oh, he was just born this way. And through my conversations with you, it's been very clear that there's been a compounding of years and years. And even when you told me you went door knocking, which I want to have you share a little bit of your story,
Sure.
I'm like, those door knocks, every door knock, you were getting a little stronger and more powerful.
Yeah.
So yes, it's not a gift in a way that it was given to you. It's a gift because what you've cultivated, so naturally show up in, and that's the gift, is the way that you share it.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's talk about your story. Give us a little bit of backstory about who you are and how you cultivated this level of strength and resiliency that you so evidently show up as.
So you'll hear it again a second time. Born and raised in Vegas, one of those rare unicorns. This is a cool city because it shows the diversity and the complexity of the human spirit. You have the biggest temptations, some of the wildest things that people experience when they come here to do whatever they do. And then you also have a strong spiritual community that most people don't know about until you come here and you find it. And so to have that growing up within a very strong, moralistic family, and I give testament to my parents, mother, father, they were amazing in raising me and instilling me with good values. And being temptation being just one decision away, just really I didn't realize it until recently, like the restraint and the discipline that it takes to not end up in a bad place, So grateful to have experienced that. Childhood was really strong, secure attachment style, and grew up playing sports. So very competitive. Dad, one of 9 kids, and who's the best, who's the fastest, who's the strongest. So instilled that in me very young. It was like, we're gonna do things, we're gonna do it to the best of our ability. Like, you come home, you train, you went to practice, cool, let's have another session. And it's just, where can we dial in even more? My mom, understanding, empathetic, intuitive, listener, just connector, can make anyone feel amazing and can learn anything from everyone. In fact, that's one of the biggest things that she's ever taught me. And so equipped with both the drive, the competitive spirit, the discipline, and the nurturing, feminine, just expansive, intuitive side of my mom was a really good blend for me to start cultivating, especially in sports, because I wanted to win, but I also wanted to connect with the people who I was winning with, So communication just naturally evolved through that competitive drive to be the best or be my best. High school shows up, continuing playing sports, enter more leadership positions in the sports that I play. So that requires just another level of integrity and honesty and competitive drive and all that stuff. So it was there that people actually started telling me that I should be a psychologist. Like, you always say the thing. Like, how do you say it like that? It's simple. It's easy to understand. Like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just listening to what you're saying. Yeah. And I'm crafting it in a way that's helpful to you. That's me trying to help. Yeah. That's not like anything other than that. And they're like, well, whatever you're doing, it helps, because I utilized what you said. I went home and I did that thing, and I'm in a way better place. So thank you. And I'm like, of course. And so over the years, I just started reflecting on that skill set. Like, what is that? And for a while, I didn't know. So I went to college trying to get into physical therapy because that was the closest thing to sports. I got an offer to go play sports in college, but decided that wasn't for me because I knew it was going to take a lot of time and I didn't want to give it. So I got into UNLV, and I met a professor my junior year who taught mental performance and really helped me understand psychology, the mind and the body, and how those interplay, and how we are our own worst enemies or our own best friends, and the skills and the strategies and the frameworks to use to understand yourself so that you can be effective in whatever you choose to do. So I'm just like mind blown in this class every day, showing up like, wow. And I show up at the class like, what else can I do? What other books do you suggest? And I just became a massive, obsessed learner and started applying the things that I was reading and understanding and learning and sharing that with my friends. And they started growing. And then this kind of natural coaching role began to emerge. Still didn't view myself as a coach, but started sharing what I was learning. Then I got in the industry in Las Vegas, working in the club scene.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where What Republic came into the picture. And that's a wild, wild place.
Yes.
And it was there that I actually got an opportunity to speak to the staff after winning an Employee of the Week. And the GM heard one of my goals, which was to do what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that to everybody, and he came up to me.
What was the statement, if you don't mind me asking? Do you remember what the goal was, or what it was?
The goal was to travel the world and
Okay.
work with leaders and help them be better versions of themselves and live life on their terms.
Yeah.
And the GM came up to me after I said that, and he's like, "So you're sure about this?" And I'm like, "Sure as I am about anything else."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Why don't you speak to the staff and motivate us and teach us?" And I thought he was joking, because it's like, what do you want me to do? Like, tell you to sell more alcohol? Like, this just doesn't exist in here, you know?
Yeah.
So he's like, "No, I want to give you a shot." And so I was like, okay. I went home the next, so that was like on a Saturday, went home that next Friday. I spoke to the staff. First time, 87 people in attendance. And it was a 7 to 8 minute speech. And it was all about giving your best. 4,000 people auditioned for 36 positions, and we're fortunate enough to be one of those 36. So let's treat the guest with respect, and let's make sure they have a good time. That was the essence. Someone recorded it. My visual was a jar of jelly beans. That was kind of the visual I was using, and someone put that on YouTube. I went viral within the MGM community, and I went to properties on the MGM properties in the Strip, and they're like, "You're the jelly bean guy." I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy." And so that was the whole first season. I spoke every Friday for that remaining of the season, and then I spoke again every Friday for the next second season. And I was at that point where I was like, I gotta go. I gotta leap. If I don't, I'm gonna stay here because the money's too good and it's easy.
Yeah.
You work 8 months out of the year. You make anywhere from 60 to 120K, depending on how you work with your guests and how much they decide to tip you. And then I went door knocking, and that's where I got rejection after rejection after rejection. And I'd be lying if it didn't take a toll. You know, it's like, dude, can I really do this? I'm 24 years old. What makes me think I can walk in here and teach an executive how to be more effective with connecting with people, influencing them, and motivating them? And I just began to spiral after 6 months and not getting anything. It's like my savings is dwindling. I'm questioning myself as a man, as a provider, was in a relationship, and just coming home just beat down. Like, what am I doing here? And when people tell you that you're too young, what can you teach me? You get cops called on you, like all that begins to compound. And it did. And I was on Instagram, of all places, and this philosophy came to me. Be that 1%. Do what 99% of the people won't do. And what would 99% of the people do in this situation? They'd quit. They'd stop. It's too hard. It shouldn't be this hard. I could probably do something else. And I didn't want to be a statistic. Never did, never want to. And so I was like, let me see what's possible. So the next week I meet a woman outside of Coffee Bean. I give her my card. I tell her what I do. She's like, "I'll be in touch." She calls me a week later. I go in for a first interview, a second interview, a third interview. Turns into a 30-day experiment where if I don't grow your business by a reasonable amount, we go our separate ways. You never hear from me again. But if I grow it and you're happy with it, we sign a year contract. Grew their business by 20%, signed a year contract. That year turned into 4. And that was the beginning of my corporate kind of experience coaching. From there, it's blossomed into working with companies like MGM, Nike, Caesars, and leaders all over the world, which was literally a vision of mine, is now a reality. And I wake up every day trying to deepen the mastery of this craft, which is connection and helping people get out of their own way and become their own best friends so they can live life on their terms.
So eloquently put. I think I told you that the first time. And what's interesting is there's a jelly bean story and a coffee bean mentioned.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what's the
The
bean?
beans.
What's the bean theme
I am
here?
Hispanic, so maybe.
I'm like, there's some sort of bean theme here.
Yeah.
Wow, there's so much that I want to dive into there, and truly, it's just a testament to your dedication to really continue to show up in those moments where, you know, I can't think of how many times I've been there. And even in this moment, there's times where I'm like, I'm ready for my next level and really questioning, like, healthfully, like, how much more can I endure for this next season? And so it's really inspiring to hear your story even again, because there's subtle nuances that that are really landing with me, and I'm hoping that are really landing with the audience who are hearing this for the first time. And something I want to dive into that you mentioned was, you initially talked about your father and how he was like instilling this, like, you practice one more, you practice again. Can we speak to how much of that child rearing and how much of that support or modeling or programming or whatever you want to call that for you, that support was instrumental in your development?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. One of the things that I've realized recently is that my dad was really good at creating pride around the last name. Like, you're a Silvas. And do you know what being a Silvas means? It means being your best. It means working hard. It means that whoever you interact with sees, good spirited, like, morals, like strong work ethic, like integrity. That's what it means to have this last name. So there was a level of like expectation to live up to that. And he would always tell me stories about, and who knows how glorified these stories are, right?
Right. You look back at your parents' stories, you're like, come on, that was
it. But his intention was to say, this is how good of the family I came from, right? We're all athletes. We're all successful in business. We all think a certain way. We all, are growth oriented.
There's a legacy happening.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that is missing a lot nowadays.
Yeah.
Where people don't have a healthy amount of pride for where they come from, what family they're in, and the impact that they make, and what is associated to their name. Like, what kind of work do you do? And what quality of work do you do? And would you be happy having that quality of work attached to your name? And if you ask that to a lot of people, I don't know if they would be happy with it.
Probably not.
And so, like, I think that was a key staple of like everything that I did. Of course, you scored a touchdown. You're a Silvas. Like, it doesn't surprise me that you're standing out amongst the rest because you put the work in to be so.
Yeah.
And so he was just reinforcing this like shattering average, because you're not average.
Yeah.
No one's average, but we settle, and that's what creates an average. And and we were just never that.
It was actually making me a little emotional when you were talking about your dad being like, of course you did that. There's a sense of, I believe in you. That's underneath that. And I've believed in you.
Yeah.
But there's also like an invitation to uphold a certain standard.
Yes.
It's this beautiful, loving presence that I was mentioning with you. It's like, there's the compassionate person that's here, but also the like, let's fucking go. That's here too. So I can see where that's come from and how you really embody that simply in your essence, as well as I'm sure in your actions as well. So thank you for sharing that. And shout out to Pops. That's amazing. And I think that you're right. There's so often that there's child rearing and parenting that's extreme on that end of like, you need to be this way, or it needs to look like this, or you need to, where he was like, no, you're gonna, because I believe in you, and like, you're gonna uphold this. There's like a softness and like a heldness with that.
Yeah.
So I think that's really beautiful. And I'm curious if it's inspired you to raise, you have a new 6 months?
Two boys.
2 boys.
Yes.
Yeah. What are the ages?
3 and 6 months.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So what has it inspired for you as a man, as a father, two boys?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you're wanting to parent and how you're wanting to instill these values and uphold that legacy with your children.
I think I'm still figuring it out, right? But some elements that stand out are just, one of the things I always want my sons to know is that I'm always there no matter what, right? And I'm inspired by a story that Kobe Bryant shared about his dad. Kobe Bryant played a game, I think it was a game, and he scored 0 points. 0. Like, no fouls, no nothing. And after the game, Kobe's dad pulled him aside. He's like, hey, regardless of how many points you score, just know that I'll always love you. And Kobe said, from that moment, he felt free to explore, to mess up, to be messy, and I want my kids to know that. I want my sons to know that whoever they become and whatever they do, that yes, there's a standard of quality, but like, I'm going to support that. I love that. I love you. Right. And so love is key. Integrity is another thing, you know, like, do your words match your actions? We are not the type of people that say one thing and do another. If you're going to commit to something, commit to it, you know, and see it out. And yeah, you may not like it, but first go all in on it. And until then, don't tell me that you don't like it. You know what I mean? So there's like, you know, that integrity, love, integrity, and then just growth, constant improvement. I just believe that progression is such a antidote for a lot of anxiety and depression and misery, that darker, heavier emotions that us as humans experience. Growth can solve a lot of that. And the more you grow, the more value you bring to yourself and to others. And that is the basis of leadership. Going first, doing things that very few people do, to serve as a beacon of inspiration of what's possible. So if I embody that in my business, in my lifestyle, in the stories that I share, in the movies that we watch, in the books that I read, in how me, like, so for example, Aiden and I, he's 3. And so I'll read him books. I'll be very specific about what books I read. Right now we're reading The Little Engine That Could.
I love that book.
But now he's getting to the age where I can just tell him stories, and he's equally as engaged as looking at a photo in a book. And so I'm like trying to figure out, what message do I want to embed in there,
right,
that is going to serve him, and try to anticipate what the world's going to be like, and try and match that belief and that skill set to what is evolving as our human race. And, you know, I'm never going to have that be down perfect, but the essence will be of love, integrity, growth, and all of these like elements that my wife and I started our relationship on, that they'll ultimately carry on.
Yeah. So you're really still in the process of fine tuning, what does this actually look like? But the essence of how you want to be with your children is there. Yeah.
Sports. We do sports, physical sports like jujitsu. He's in baseball right now. He's just keeping him active, keeping
the
him
6-month-old.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
He starts next month. But the community too, like, you're going to be around people. We're not going to isolate you. You're going to be able to connect and communicate. And, you know, he's defying things right now. It's 3 months, the 3-year-old Aiden. But yeah, I mean, every day is a learning lesson.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you still sound very much like a student of life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And being a parent, I'm not one yet, but I could imagine that is its own, education and learning curve.
Yes.
Right. So I really admire your willingness to say, like, I'm still figuring that out. And I think that that's also a really great quality of a leader, is not to feel the pressure to always know the answers, but to admit when you don't, and be willing to say, I'll get back to you, or that I'm going to still look into that, or I'm still a student and I'm still figuring it out. So I really just want to reflect that back to you. And when you were talking, it really reminded me as well, in the moments when I felt powerful, I also felt my most purposeful. My history, I've had a significant history with what I was labeled as depression. Looking back, I think I just didn't have a driving force. I didn't have a goal. I didn't have a purpose. There was months when I was in my early 20s when I could not get out of bed. And I was such an ambitious person. So for me, it was, my whole identity was wrapped up in that. And I had a really life circumstance that brought me to that place, and I couldn't find my bearings again. And it was really challenging for me. So I think I want to really invite the audience to sit with that. If you're navigating something where you feel like it's disorienting, or it's leading you to a place of, obviously this is not clinical depression. You know, my background is in psychology. I want to be really mindful about that. But oftentimes when we have a goal, and when we're striving, or when we're growing, or when we're directing our energy towards something that's bettering us, we naturally feel better.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And so I'd like to actually ask you a question that I'm not sure if you'll have the answer to, but I'm hoping that you'll indulge me anyway. What would you like your children to know? Like, if you could tell them say something now that they would hear in like 30 years from now, what would you say?
Wow. Let me see.
Yeah, tune in. Stay with it for a second.
this is going to sound maybe more on the egotistical side, but you're going to change the world, you know? And how I interpret that is you're going to be so you that your you-ness is going to affect those you interact with. And as a default, that ripple over time will change the world by definition.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Very beautiful. I'm glad you took the extra moment to sit with that. And with that, again, is this belief? And it really speaks to the work that you do in the world, right? Is like mindset and how fundamental that is in achievement, in goals, in changing the world. I don't know who said this quote, but I feel like you know the one I'm going to say. It's like those who believe that they can change the world are usually the ones
Steve Jobs.
who do. Was it Steve Jobs? Okay, thank you. So with that, it's you do instill that in them, in the belief systems and how they're operating in the world. So that was really beautifully put.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
yes. You. And so to continue on the family thread, because I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah,
I don't know how you're feeling, but I'm like, I love this because
Yeah.
it's not often that you speak with somebody who is navigating parenthood like early on in a way where they're still really growing and learning like their groove. So how has it been leading and transferring your leadership that you've cultivated in business and in your career now to home? What does that look like?
So I would actually start with so being a dad automatically made me a better leader in business with my clients. This paternal force was activated.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I was effective, but there wasn't this strong, like, deep love and support and challenge there that came when I was now a parent. Like there's a protective force, right? And so having felt that with Aiden, and then over the days, months, years that obviously he's been alive, and then including a second one, there's no room to fail or like to stop or to not progress, because what I'm doing is affecting them, right? So there's an obligation, but then there's also a choice to take that on and to forge the path. And so I'm leading the family in the way of honoring what I feel I was called here to do. Doing it in a way that I feel prideful over, trusting the process, knowing that I don't know everything, but I'm just going to surrender to what this is and allow what God, universe, whatever to come through me to create what is best for this moment, and to demonstrate that in the body of man, which my sons, being boys and being men, like I want to embody that. So that's kind of like personally, but professionally, I think there's an intensity that I bring now, and it's still gentle. It's still with love, but it's like, I'm not going to let you slide.
Yeah.
It's like a kid trying to like get out of the chores. It's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
You want to be better, right? Like, stop doing this and let's start doing that and breaking it down, but with like a strong love that it wasn't there before. The love was there and maybe the strength was there, but not combined. So it's like it's a precise dose of like a punch in the face with a hug afterwards.
There you go, because
like,
I love you. Yeah. Did that naturally evolve, or was
naturally?
There wasn't a moment where you're
it was instantaneously.
Interesting.
Yeah. The next session after Aiden, total difference.
What do you make of that?
That being a parent brings something out of you that only being a parent can do.
Yeah.
Because your life is no longer about you.
Yeah.
Right? Me and my wife, before our kids, were our own separate entities. If something happened to me, she would be fine. I mean, she would be able to get through that.
Right.
Our kids are 100% dependable on us, like right now. Right? So me and another human being, my wife, Amanda, the amazing woman that she is, created a human. And part of that human is me. So I look at him and I see myself.
Yeah.
And I love that. And then I also see my wife and I love that. And then I also see him for him and I love that. Right? So there's like 3 dimensions of life in one human being.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you can't have that any other way. I don't know what it's like to adopt. I imagine it's similar, but when it's your own creation, there's nothing more beautiful than that. So I think God or our own evolution has equipped us with feelings to protect, provide, and serve.
Yeah.
At different levels.
Yeah. Yeah. I can feel the passion rising in you. And so that's really interesting to hear that it was immediate. Because you would, I guess the naivety is like, it would be through, like you would grow into that. And maybe for some people that is, but I guess for you, you just noticed instant light switch. It's on, here we go. Another level.
Yeah. And it has evolved.
And it continues to.
So it was initial boost. And I'm like, whoa, like this, I feel another level of responsibility.
Yeah.
And then that responsibility has grown. It's like, there's no coasting anymore. It's like intentionality with everything, or as much as I could possibly manage. I get tired and I make mistakes too, but like quickly adjusting, like, okay, being intentional. Like, this is for you and the family now. Yeah. Not just for you.
It's so much bigger.
So much bigger.
And I guess in some ways there's more to lose. So there's like higher risk.
Yeah. And higher risk comes with higher attention.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you make mistakes. Is that true?
Yeah. Of course.
Tell me about your mistakes.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me about some of the ways in which you're failing or you're making mistakes in your leadership at home with your family. What does that look like?
So one that initially comes up is managing of time.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. So I have 3 loves. What I do for work, my wife, and my kids. The greatest loves that I think any man could ever ask for. Purpose-driven work, intimacy in a relationship, and trust with someone that would be a ride or die for you. And then to have someone that you can mold, like amazing. And they all require their own amounts of time.
Yeah.
And because my work fills me in so many different ways, because the work that I do reaches so many lives, there is a natural gravitation to want to put additional effort there because of how scalable that impact is. And impact is really important to me because it's a form of service, right? And Ali said, service is the rent that we pay while we're on earth. It's like, I want to do work that matters, because if I do that, not only do I earn a living, but I feel like I am adding value to the world, and then also being a good example for my kids and my wife. So it's hard to pull away from that.
Yeah. So
then when I'm with my kids, there are moments where I'm super present and I'm there. And then there's also moments where I'm thinking about work. Right. And so I mess that up a lot. And with my wife, trying to be as intentional as possible to like go on date nights and say, hey, you're a mother. Yes, but you're also my wife and I love you, and I don't know if I don't think I do that enough. So babe, if you're listening, I'm sorry. It's like, but that's, I think, the human struggle. It's like, I want to be where I'm at when I'm there. And as a byproduct of that, time can distort, or I can make things more important than they are, or that they need to be, and not be where I should be. You know what I mean? So I think that's one area that's, I don't know if I'll ever perfect that, but I'm mindful of it. And all I could do is communicate with it and set up as many systems as I can to try and alleviate some of those problems. I mean, I make mistakes all the times in sessions by asking the wrong questions or bringing up the wrong topics or going to a different country and assuming that they operate with the same kind of principles. And it isn't until you get shocked that you're like, oh, gotta dig into the toolkit to like fix this, So there are those types of mistakes. There's, not asking for help because of, I feel like I need to do it all sometimes, like leaning more into that and cultivating team and collaboration. And those are things that I'm mindful of. I think those are probably the main ones that come to mind. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really relatable for all of us. And I can't imagine, because I don't have a family in that capacity, and trying to navigate all of those things and being so in love with that, that you want it. And the way that you expressed it was, I want to invite the audience to really re-listen to that. It wasn't like,
I have to spend time with my children. It was like, I want to give so much to all of these things because I love them so dearly. And in some ways, I don't know that I have all the time in the world. I don't know
Right.
how to like manage the time that I have
Yeah.
because it is finite, right? Like we don't. So I just feel like that's a really beautiful expression of your heart that you want to pour so much into everything and noticing where in some ways, because of your humanness,
Yeah.
you're a little limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
course.
And I'm curious if we could go a little bit deeper with the time management. Are there things that you're putting in place that you have realized that work from your entrepreneurial endeavors that are actually working for now managing and leading and supporting your family?
Yeah. One of them, so I do a podcast. I travel to anywhere from 15 to 30 states a year. And I'm in the process of writing a book and somewhat of a course that is kind of like a passion project I haven't really solidified yet. But so I'm working on building the passive income side so I could take away some of the effort that's being put into those places. So that will give me some additional time. I'm hiring individuals to help me with the podcast and the social media and all of the back end stuff. My wife being one of those people, and then some contractors that are supporting me in that area. And then, with the rise of AI, that could also change a lot of the time consuming creative stuff that I do, that I bring to my sessions. I'm naturally curious by nature. Like it's not so much when's the end, it's how far can I go, and so when I find myself not having enough time to learn all the things that I want to learn. So it's like, I don't know what system I could have in place there to like help me with that. Because once I learn something, then I have a whole new set of questions that I have to now know. So that drives me to like want to learn, and I think that's really beautiful because it helps me sustain the growth and it also helps me teach as I'm learning. But I mean, I've taken steps. I think there's more steps that I need to take, but I've definitely become more aware of that as I become a father, because it's like as I'm doing these things, I'm missing out on very important moments too when I'm traveling.
Yeah.
And it puts a lot on my wife, to have to hold down the fort when I'm gone. And so I'm recognizing that and doing my best to wean off certain things and double down on other areas.
Yeah, it really requires you to like evaluate on a very deep level, like where is your energy and time best spent, and and then doubling down on the areas that are supportive and really ixnaying the things that are not. I think it requires such a precise look at your life. You really got to comb through kind of every area, which in and of itself is like a job. And then after you comb through, it's like, okay, this here and this here, then it's the hiring, it's the delegating, it's the outsourcing and the resources to do that. So it is like a building of something for sure.
Is. It's like another kid. And writing a book is like another child,
Yeah.
But it's like, I was going to say, because right now I'm in the transition of acquiring, or not acquiring, but like attracting more higher end clients who pay more and require more of my time. And as a byproduct, I'm transitioning out of who I used to serve, where my time was more constricted. Now my time is more freed up. And I'm noticing my identity being attached to how busy I am or how busy I was, because for almost a decade, before kids, it was like grind, go, yes, to all these opportunities, do this, do this, do this. And like, as I'm pulling away and becoming more intentional, I still find myself wanting to get back into the weeds when that is not needed.
Yeah.
And so when I have an opening in my calendar, now it's like, what needs to go there?
Right.
Do I just throw myself into the action because I'm so used to that? Or do I actually sit in stillness and allow new ideas to come through, and then once they do, act on those?
Yeah.
And so that's been a really cool transition.
What are the answers that you're finding in that space? Is it simply when there's space, you're reflecting in that moment, that particular space, what's needed here? Is it stillness or action? Or do you have like a framework that actually supports you in discerning?
So as I'm sitting still, a lot of it is piecing together what fulfills me most, how I do certain things,
Yeah.
and how I can be a more effective teacher. That's usually the frame in which I'm looking at it. How can I improve? And that could be, usually it's around my craft.
Mm-hmm.
And so as an example, recently, like let's say in the last year, some of what's been coming up is like, people keep asking you how you do what you do, why you do what you do. How do you do it? Like, where's the framework? People have been wanting you to write a book for a long time. And it's not that you're doing out of obligation, but it's like, you've been doing this for so long. Clearly you're doing something right. What is that?
Yeah.
And because I was so busy, I didn't create the time to think through it.
Yeah. Because you was so automatic for you. You're just doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Unconscious and unconscious competence. Right. Yeah. And so I had to peel that back, and that requires time that I'm not active the way I normally am.
From a physical standpoint, you're more introspective.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm naturally introspective by nature, but this was a different story. Yeah. This is like really sitting with the bird's eye view of like, okay, how did you create that breakthrough? And so as a result of 8 to 9 months of reflection, I now have a framework that I'm 6 months into writing that is about 60% done. And I have something to like, I'm working on.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't have come if I didn't clear my schedule, become intentional with my time, and sit. And just sit. And let that see what happens. You know, most of our ideas come to us when we're not moving.
In the shower, usually.
Yeah, right. Or long walks.
Right.
Or freaking swimming in the pool. Like minimal distraction, minimal noise. That's when those intuitive nudges can get louder, and you can recognize them. But in society, we're bombarded by distractions, constantly something to do and something to watch, something that is demanding our attention. And if we don't pull that back, we're going to be swept up.
Yeah.
And a tumbleweed blowing in the wind.
Yeah. And as a high achiever, you naturally crave information. You're kind of like, I want to learn and learn and learn. And so sometimes it's hard to pull away from that, not because of addiction or just being bombarded, but because you actually crave knowledge and information.
Right.
And so it's challenging because it's something that you love. And it's like, yes. And it seems like there might be a need for more space here. Yeah. And that's really a shout out to mom for the intuitive part that she really supported you in cultivating, because that's not something that you often see a lot of men like really being highly aware of, at least at a certain level of development, their conscious development.
Yeah, thank you. And it's also required a long-term view on business, life, and skill. The older I've gotten, the more I've played the long game or played an infinite game, you know, a game that doesn't end. So when you play a game that doesn't end, what becomes important is what you do daily, what the process is. And so many people that I talk to are like, how wide can I go? And I'm like, how deep can I go? You know, because I find that the depth is what allows me to understand myself more and offer value to people that no one else can. Because like, if you just use a business example, right? There are other coaches that have way more clients than me, charge way more than me, and do so many other things than I do. And that's cool if that's what they want. But for me, I find that if I stick to these fundamentals and just work these fundamentals as deeply as I can, as actively as I can, as intentionally as I can every single day, I think that's going to yield a much faster ascension once the compound effect takes in. It's like money compounding over time. Yeah. Right. And I think since I've been doing this over the last 9-10 years, I'm entering that phase where it's like, whoom,
it's about to turn.
Momentum is like shifting fast.
Yeah.
And things are just popping in, and downloads are appearing, and things are clicking in my mind, and my articulation is becoming better. And it's like these skills that I've been honing my whole life, but really intentionally over the last 10 years are starting to really blossom.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The mastery is found in the fundamentals.
Yes.
And I think that that's often missed, especially in our culture now.
It's not sexy.
It's not sexy.
And everyone wants to be flashy and sexy.
I know. So yeah, I really hear that and admire that with you. And that's why you are so masterful, because you understand the basics and you're willing to do the repetition and the unsexy things for the long-term sexiness that you want.
And I had to be honest with myself too.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the clients that I have are very big visionaries, and they can handle lots of things. And, you know, I find that my personality is more the grounding force for a person like that, who the CEO or the person who's the innovator or the disruptor. And I just naturally attract that person because they need someone like myself to hold them and ground them and bring them somewhat to reality, but I can also understand their drive, whereas most people can't. And so I have this unique situation where I can speak their language and also remind them of what's important, you know? But that was hard for me to admit because my ego wanted to be a disruptor, a visionary, in the mix, like flashy, but I'm not that. And the more I tried to be like that, the more conflict I had inside and the things didn't flow. And I would get more frustrated. I'd be more in my head, and all these other things that I didn't want would start to happen. And so when I started falling in love with that and working my strengths, and although I'm slower to move, I'm intentional and I lay bricks precisely. And that over time yields a building that is indestructible.
Ooh, yes. Really feeling that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Something I want to circle back to as well. You're talking about, you know, leadership in the family, and it seems like one of the main areas is like outsourcing right now and managing your time. What about communication with your family and with yourself and people around you? What does that look like for you in this season of your life?
Well, Amanda and I are really good about connecting on what's working and what's not working regularly. She's a common guest on the podcast too. So that helps. Like, we're constantly explaining what's going on in our relationship, what we're learning, and how we can improve things. But the relationship with her is weekly. You know, how are you feeling? Do you need support with the kids? Do we need to take a trip? Because I know I've been traveling a lot, like these types of things. And she's also really good at giving me feedback, even though I don't ask for it. So I appreciate that, because I can sometimes get in my own flow and forget, right?
Yeah.
And so she brings me back. That's what that communication looks like. That's regular, that's frequent, and we're not afraid to lean in and like really challenge each other.
Yeah.
And something that's beautiful that happened recently is we got into a really heated discussion, probably the first time in our relationship, but it was healthy and it was with love. And we both were just like total opposites. Like, this is my stance. This is my stance. And we're like, well, tell me more about that. Well, tell me more about that. Da, da, da. And after about 45 minutes, we're like, that was actually really good. Thank you. Thank you for that. Right.
Love it.
And we felt closer because of that. But that's a result of constant connection and refinement over the years. And we've been together for 11 years now.
Can we pause there for a moment? When you're talking about that communication, is it in passing, or do you say like on Sunday?
Both.
Okay. So
Both.
you have a dedicated time to.
Not always, but we'll plan it when we need it. Right.
Okay.
So like we're in the car with the kids taking Aiden to soccer practice. We'll talk then.
Okay.
Hey, I know, and I'm mindful of like where my time has been going and how I'm feeling and maybe anticipating what she's feeling. So I'll check in. How are you feeling about this last week? You know, we just got back from vacation, so I'm gonna have to spend a little bit more time here to make up for a few things, but are you cool with that? Like that type of stuff.
Letting her know where you're at and where you're going
and what I'm feeling.
Anticipate it and what you're feeling as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then so there's that. And then there's times where I forget to thank her for all the things that she does. Like, for example, on Easter, she laid out everything, beautiful breakfast, got the kids ready, put eggs in the basket, like did all the amazing mom things.
Aww.
And I didn't say thank you. I didn't acknowledge her. And at the end of the day, she goes, hey, I just got to tell you something. I'm like, what? She goes, it really bothered me that you didn't say thank you. And I know I'm not doing it for that, but I'd really love that if you could appreciate the level of, you know, attentiveness that I bring to the kids. And I was like, oh, damn, I'm sorry. That's my fault. I should have noticed that. You're right. Thank you for saying that. Man. Okay. Noted. You know, so she'll tell me that in passing. A lot of it is in passing just because with kids, everything's like so scattered.
Right.
But there are nights where they go to bed early, and rather than watching a show, which is something that we like to do, we'll turn it off and we'll be like, so what's going on? And those will be like an hour long where we're like diving in. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the structure of it, but also the flow with that as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I was really listening to what you were saying, and it just sounds like the feedback is really important to you because you want to grow. And I think that I myself have noticed that in the years that I'm growing the most are the years that I'm asking for feedback, not just kind of expecting it or being like, oh, I did good.
That's cool.
Right. So tell me about your relationship with feedback, because it's been mentioned here a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know that some of the other guests who have podcasted with you mentioned that you ask for feedback.
Yeah.
And so I was curious, what is your relationship with feedback? How do you like to receive feedback? And I want to note too that, you know, your wife mentioned that she wanted to be acknowledged, and maybe there's like a words of affirmation, love language or something. And is there do you have some sort of a love language with feedback that you'd like to share?
No, I just think that how do you know if you're going to grow? You need feedback. How do you know if you did good? You need feedback. How do you know if you're wrong? You need feedback. Like no matter what you do, if you want to grow, you need feedback. And there's just no way of getting around it. And I think initially there was a bit of a people pleaser tone to it, where I was like, I want to make sure that you like me. So I want to see if you like me. You know, that was like early in my career. So I'd do a workshop and I'd go up to people and be like, what'd you think? And I'm really not looking to improve my skill as much as I'm looking to see if you liked it.
Yeah.
Right? Because
or me.
Or
you
me.
Like, yeah.
If you liked it, you like me.
Yeah.
And if you like me, that's good.
And I'm lovable.
Yeah. Right. And then as I've matured, I've recognized where that is. And now it's more so skill based. Like I want to be better. And do you have information for me that can help me be better? And there may be things that you say that I don't agree with and I don't have to implement them, but why not ask and capitalize on a moment when I'm with somebody if I feel that they, you know, have experience or knowledge or statistics or whatever that I'm looking for that can help me. Like, why would I not ask that? So I've just built it into after something. Okay, what's a good, better, how? What's something I did good? What can I do better? And how do I go about that?
I like that. So can you say that one more time?
Good, better, how?
Good, better, how?
That's something that professor that I told you about.
Yeah.
He that's his framework.
I like that.
So he's the one that utilizes that with the Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Do you hold your wife to the same standard that you hold you?
I used to, and then she felt like I was coaching her.
Yeah.
You know, and so now I love her for who she is, and I support what she feels called to do, as opposed to maybe forcing her to be what I think she could be. It's now so allowing her to blossom into who she wants to be.
Yeah, like really honoring her pacing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So long as the values are the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because we can have the same values and those just get manifested in different ways. And so since we start our relationship, it's always been founded on growth. That's been the staple.
Yeah.
And that growth warrants feedback that you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
It warrants honest, hard conversations. It requires honesty on what one wants. And the constant communication always keeps us in the loop on what we're learning, what we're going through, what we need to do. And so it's just a natural evolution of what we value.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so often I had a really challenging relationship with my family. And looking back, I recognize I was doing that to them. They always felt therapized is what they would say.
Yeah.
Like, we always feel like you're coaching us. And one of my greatest gifts that I've also cultivated is I really see people in their potential. Like, somebody could come to me in the worst of a mess and I could see where they're going. And so I hold them to that.
Yes.
And not everybody wants to be held to that. And especially in the ways that I was doing it, because there was an underlying, if you're like this, I will love you more. And if you're like this, that's
what they felt.
That's what they felt. Yeah. And it wasn't like I was trying to do that. It was like, I love you regardless. And I just know what's possible for you. So like, let's do it.
Yeah. Like, why wouldn't you want that?
Why wouldn't you want to grow? And I think that's the thing is, I think inherently most people want to grow, or they like a flower, sometimes people just naturally grow through life experience, even through joyful things, whether it's feedback or whatever. But it doesn't always need to be at the forefront of everything, right? Some people have a little bit different systems or journey or process. And once I realized I was doing that with my family, my entire relationship with them changed. I was able to interact with them in such a way where I was a lot more mindful of like ways I was wording things, or how I was, you know, for example, my mom was a smoker and I was just like, the way that I would invite her to was not
Yeah.
great coaching, first of all, because I was shaming her. Like, don't you want to be at my wedding? I was like, okay, first of all, I would never even say something like that to a client. So that's not even coaching. That's just shaming. And so I think with the people that we love the most, we often want to grow the most out of love,
Yeah.
because we want to grow together. We want to experience life together. We want to have this aliveness and these experiences together. So it usually comes from love, but not everybody experiences that.
No,
So,
that's very true.
yeah. So it's interesting to hear that that's, what you all have navigated. And I'm curious, was there a specific moment or conversation, or how did that actually play
Where
out?
she told me I was coaching her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was late one night, probably 6 years into our relationship. We're not married at this point, but we're engaged. And she's like experiencing something. I forget what it was, but she was pretty bent out of shape about it. And I was like, so what's going on? And she's like, well, I just feel like this. And I was like, well, you know what you could do? You could do this, this, and this. She's like, look,
Yeah.
I don't need a coach right now. I need my husband. And I was like, okay. And then in my mind, I'm like, I am your husband and a coach. I don't know how to do that. And so that was a journey for me in realizing what she needed and how she viewed me as a husband and what I needed to step into. And then also how I needed to clarify what was she looking for. You know, are you looking for me to just support and listen? And I'm here for that. Or do you want to solve this? Okay. Like, give me something that I can serve you in, and maybe it's nothing, and I'll just be here, and that's okay, but like, I needed that feedback to know how to course correct. And so, but it wasn't until she vocalized that created the opportunity for me to learn distinctions in me, that not 5 elements at once need to come out when I'm interacting with someone. I could go one dimension at a time and add more as needed.
Yeah, sometimes separating that identity, like for what we do, is not who we are.
Yes.
But it's really hard when you love what you do. It's like, but it is who I am.
Yeah, right. And you get rewarded for it.
And you get rewarded for it. You're celebrated for it. It's like wrapped up into so much.
Yes.
So sparsing that out can feel like a necklace it's like, where do you begin? And so it's challenging, but on the other side of that is an ability to recognize what's needed when. And sometimes, I imagine as a partner, knowing that what to do sometimes is to just be present.
Yes.
And that's the thing to do.
That's usually what it is.
Yeah. And how do you feel about that? Because you don't have to do anything. You just got to be present.
Right. Which is actually the hardest thing to do.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like it is the hardest thing to do, because it's like, I feel I need to do something to prove my value to you. But in reality, all I need to do is not do the things that I think I need to do to just be who I am, and let that do the work, which requires surrender. And there's no control in that, also known as truth. Like, what's the truth? Because when you're telling the truth, you're at your best. And when you're at your best, the best things happen, even if they aren't the things that you think you want. It's the best situation overall. And presence is very correlated for me with truth. And the truth is just this, and sometimes there's no words that need to be spoken, just eye contact and presence, like you said. And my wife is just, that's all she's looking for. Which makes it easy on me in a way, but also hard to have to give to be that. I have to make sure my energy's right. I got to make sure things are done. I got to make sure the kids and managing all of that. It's hard.
I respect it. And as you're saying that, I was reminded of my own belief around truth. And I think that truth and love are synonymous in many ways, right? And the most loving thing that we can do is be in truth. And the most truthful thing that we can do is be in love, right? So beautifully spoken from you around just like the presence and how difficult that can be for a man who wants to fix, but knowing that the feminine and the partner wants presence. And when you're managing so many things as an entrepreneur, as a coach and a father, and as your own individual person, which we didn't even mention, we're so diving into how are you and your family and all these things, there's so many facets, there's so many layers and roles to play. And so cultivating presence, which is the reflection that I gave you at the beginning around how that's really palpable here. You know, you're on your way.
Thank you. Good.
You're doing something
Yeah,
right.
progress.
Yeah. So do you have any last words for our listeners who might be navigating entrepreneurship, coaching, wanting to build a legacy, and navigating a family? What would you say to them if they're in the process of maybe the thick of it right now of trying to find their way?
I'd say focus on the 3 S's: style, size, speed. What's your style? You know, you copying somebody else is not going to help you be the best version of you. So what's your style in anything? Style in relationships, style of clothing, style of communication. Like, know your style, own your style. What's the size of the life that you want? Like, do you want X number of houses? Do you want X number of businesses? Do you want X number of money, kids? Like, what's the size? And let that be cool, depending on your style. And then what speed? What pace? Are you in the fast lane? Do you like that? Do you really like that? Cool. You on more like me, where it's like intentional, like slow building, but over time, massive like compound effect? Know that. Because when you know those 3 things, it takes so much pressure off of you to have to be something that you think you should be, as opposed to just showing up to a space, knowing who you are and letting that be good enough. Because who you'll attract when you're there will be the people who fan those flames. And you'll quickly realize who's supportive for you and who's a good fit and who's not. But if you don't do that, you'll be quote unquote lying or going against what you naturally feel. And that's always going to feel forced. And anything that you force never turns out the best for you. So get in alignment, let it flow, focus on the process, and surrender to something bigger than you that you may not even know how to explain, but just trust.
I had to snap for that one. That was really good. And I love the emphasis too on the speed portion.
Yeah.
Because you're like, do you really want that? Like, asking yourself underneath that, you think that's what you want. Are you sure? Are you sure? And maybe even asking why.
Yeah.
Why? Like, going down, how many whys do we need to go to, and to actually get to the core of what's the reason why you want to go that fast? Because, you know, sometimes they say you got to slow down to speed up. Right? And I've learned that. I'm still learning that, actually. That still comes up for me. Right? So I really appreciate those S's and everything that you've shared here today on the podcast and the show. And I would just love to know, where are ways that people can get in touch with you? What do you have open for enrollment right now?
Yeah, nothing yet necessarily open for enrollment. I do take one-on-ones, but that's just kind of on a fit-by-fit basis. I do have a few openings right now. So if you feel called, just DM me. Instagram is probably the best place to reach. I have all the hubs located there. That's where I spend a lot of my time. And then the podcast, which you'll be on, is now in 130 plus countries, and we're doing well. We're getting the word out. So be that 1%. That's on Spotify and iTunes.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and your time.
Thank you.
That's really valuable. And I sense that. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you all for tuning in to this show. And if it meant something to you, please let us know in the ratings and reviews, and also tag us in your stories. Let us know what a big takeaway was. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.